I have been working my way through the book of Job, looking at the Hebrew text with commentary, and also I'm going to be making, when it's relative, I believe, New Testament application. We have worked our way through the first three chapters, and then also chapters 38 to 42, looking at each verse and pretty much every verb and participle, and from a grammatical perspective, and then also with commentary. So now we are at chapter 4, verses 12 to 21. And here we're going to see a continuation of the speech of Eliphaz. Eliphaz, in this section, down to 5:17, describes a vision that he had had. In the vision, Eliphaz is taught that no creature can be holy or blameless before God. Even the angels are charged with folly. It is best, therefore, to trust God and view his afflictions as disciplinary. This is what Eliphaz is now going to present to Job. So as we pick it up, verse 12, I'll be slowly reading the Hebrew for anyone that wants to follow. And then I'll be looking at the grammar along. So we begin in verse 12. Actually, verses, he is already, the guilty are going to be, and now he gives a vision that he had to try to prove his point. And so we continue then at verse 12. Ve'elai davar yenugav, and unto me there was secretly brought a word. The verb here, yeganav, is from ganav. It's a puel imperfect, third masculine singular from ganav, to steal, to have been stolen, or to be brought by stealth, I guess you could say. So unto me, a word was, we could translate it secretly brought, or brought was stolen, in the sense that it was secretly by stealth. This word that he's going to talk about was brought to him in a dream or in a vision, and he's going to drive that home. So he goes on, but tekach ozni shemitz minhu, that is, and my ear received a whisper from it. Notice tekach here is from lakach. It's a cow imperfect, a third feminine singular from lakach. The lamed has assimilated into the kaf here. So my ear received a whisper from it, and menhu would be from it. Who is your pronominal suffix, third masculine singular. So as he begins verse 12, he's going to talk about how his ear really received a whisper. Eliphaz only received a fragment of revelation from this awesome vision. And let me just make a statement about this section. It is one of the most beautiful and famous passages, I should say, of the book. I quote uh, Reichardt in the Sonsino Bible, Books of the Bible, on page 15. I thought this was a wonderful quote, and he is quoting Peake, Peake. This is one of the famous passages in the book, from here 12 to 21, of singular poetic and mystic beauty. Eliphaz asserts that no creature can be spotless in God's sight, not even the angels, who are pure spirit, far less men, formed out of the dust and so frail that they are crushed with ease. This lesson he had learned for himself in an experience, the horror of which is renewed as he relates it. The description of it ranks with the most wonderful triumphs of genius in the world's literature. And that's a quote from Reichardt, who is referring to Peake. This is on page 15 of the Sonsino Books of the Bible, the Book of Job. So it is a wonderful classic piece. According to Peake, it ranks one of the most wonderful triumphs of genius in the world's literature. So we want to look at it as we continue and see the beauty of what we are being taught here, or what is being said. Notice verse 13. Bisifim mehez yonot laila. Bin full tardema al anashim. In the visions of the night, actually in disquieted thoughts, or in thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep, tardema, falls upon men. So this word, se'ifim, looks at actually disquieted thoughts that he had in his sleep, when he was sleeping. And so as we continue to look at what he will describe, notice it's from the visions of the night when deep sleep falls upon men. Notice here, bin full is from nafal, to fall. It's a construct, a cow infinitive construct, with the inseparable bait pronominal suffix. And so we would translate it when deep sleep falls. Tardema, we find that in the book of Genesis. God gave Adam a tardema, a deep sleep. We also find it in Genesis 15, where Abraham is given a tardema as God passes through the pieces in that covenant that he is making in Genesis 15. So as we continue on, when deep sleep falls upon men, that's when he has had this vision. Eliphaz recounts the vision he had while he was in a tardema, a deep sleep. What he saw created fear within him. His bones shook, and the hair of his flesh stood straight up as an unidentified form stood before his face. While he could not make out his shadowy form, a still small voice uttered a revelation to Eliphaz. And notice then, as we read on, he says, Pachat Kera'ani Ure'ada. Fear came to me, and trembling, or came upon me and trembling, Berov atzmotai hifchid, and the multitude of my bones it caused to shake, or it caused to feel dread, we could translate it. Notice fear met me, or came upon me. From kara, it's a cow perfect, third masculine singular with the first person singular pronominal suffix. So fear or terror came upon me, and trembling, and all of my bones, the multitude of my bones, it caused to shake. If chid is from pachad, meaning to feel dread, and I've rendered it to shake in the context here. A hifil, a perfect third masculine singular from pachad. So he's picturing this scene where his hair stood straight up and his bones shook, and he's going to see an unidentified face that's going to stand before him and speak. So as we read on, he says in verse 14 or verse 15, V'ruach al panei yachalof tesamer sa'arat besari, and a spirit before my face passed by before my face, and it made the hair of my flesh to stand up. So tesamer means something like to stand erect, to stand up. And so a spirit passes by, and ya alof is from chalaf, to pass by. It's a cow imperfect, third masculine singular from chalaf. So a spirit before my face passed by, and the hair of my flesh stood up, or was made to stand up. Notice tesamer is from samar, to stand erect. We have the idea here, and we have a pl imperfect, third feminine singular from samar, and so the hair of my flesh, it stood erect. Talk about being terrified. I think he is describing this. And as he is going to describe it, he'll talk about hearing a still small voice. Notice as we continue in verse 16 then, Ya'amod velo akir marehu. It stood, and I could not make out or discern its appearance. Temuna leneged einai, a form before my eyes. Demama bakol eshma, a whisper and a voice I heard. So this is something that it's, I suppose, like a dream, but it's a vision, and he hears this whisper and a voice. Just to look a little bit at the grammar, Ya'amod is the cow imperfect, third masculine singular from Amad, and I could not discern its appearance. Akir is from Nakar, to cause, to discern, or to know. It's a hifil imperfect, first common singular from Nakar, and I could not discern its appearance. It was a form before my eyes, and I heard a whisper. Demama is whisper, and kol eshma, and a voice I heard. Eshma is from shama, the cow imperfect first common singular. So he's describing what he is hearing now as he hears this voice. It's like a whisper. And so in verse 17, he describes it. Ha'anosh me Eloah yitzdak im me osehu yithar uh, gavar. Notice, shall a man before God be just? Shall a man from his maker, shall he be pure? Or shall a man be pure from his maker? Literally, from his maker shall a man be pure. And so we have a question here. And notice Yitzdak is the cow imperfect third masculine singular from Sadak. And from his maker, me osehu, is from asa. Notice we have the mem prefix, the preposition, and the noon has dropped out, and that's why we have the compensatory lengthening from min osehu to me, from ahiri to etseri. Osehu is from asa. It is the verb to make, and here it's a participle, a cow participle masculine singular from asa. So shall from his maker. And notice who here is the pronominal suffix, third masculine singular. Historically, it would have been, I believe, me o se who, and the hey part of the who has dropped out in light of the final hey of the participial form of asa. So shall a man from his maker be pure? Yithar is from tahar, to be pure, a cow imperfect third masculine singular. So what Eliphaz is saying here is that man is not able to vindicate himself before God. In the presence of a holy creator, man in no way can be pure, is what Eliphaz is saying. And so he continues then in verse 18. Hein ba'avadav lo ya'amin, u'b'melachav yasim teholah. That is, behold, he does not, among his servants, he does not put trust. Ya'amin. And his angels he places, and I'm going to render this word only occurs one time in the Hebrew Bible. He places air. Just a word here, behold, among his servants, he does not place trust or put trust. Amin is from Aman. It's a Hiphil imperfect third masculine singular from Aman. So he does not place trust among his servants. I mean, and even among his angels. Notice among his angels, he places. Now this word only occurs one time in the, and that's here. He places taholah. The word, I looked it up in BDB, can be related to an Arabic word that means air, and also an Ethiopic word that means to wander, like to go astray. And so we could translate this, I'm thinking, among his angels, he places air. In other words, he even among his angels, they can't be perfect. So no one is. And so Job, I think the thought is admit it and accept the discipline that God is bringing to you. As we look at this verse, then, as we said, even angels, when compared to God, are imperfect. A primary example of this, I believe, is Satan in the first few chapters, who is not only, I believe, a wicked creature, but an opponent of God. And as we look at the New Testament, we certainly see this in 2 Peter 2:4. Some interpreters want to see the Satan simply as a neutral figure, almost like a prosecuting attorney that God is using, ha-satan. However, I think in my own understanding, it's looking at the Satan who has always opposed God from the very beginning. And Satan was a liar from the beginning. And he was also an opponent of God and an accuser of the brethren. And so when we look at the New Testament, which I think gives a complete revelation of Hasatan, the Satan, uh, there's only one among the angels. Uh, I should say, let me go back. There's no angel that can have perfection. They're all charged with imperfection. And like I said, the primary example, of course, I believe, is Hasatan, or Satan. Then in verse 19, he continues reading the Hebrew. Af shochane bate homer asher be'afar yesodam. Indeed, then, how much more the ones who dwell in houses of clay. Notice shochane is from shachan, shachan to dwell. Here we have a participle, a cow participle, nominative, uh, a masculine plural from shachan. So how much more indeed those who dwell in houses of homer, in houses of clay. Asher be'afar yesodam, whose foundation is in the dust. In other words, we were created from dust and we return to dust. So whose foundation is in the dust, he's saying, Yedakaum lifnei ash, who are crushed before the moth. As we look at this, notice after the participle, we have whose foundation is in the dust and who are crushed. They are crushed. Daka is the word for crush. It's a PL imperfect, third person plural from daka, third masculine plural from daka, who they are crushed before the moth. And so the thought here is man is simply made of dust. If angels are charged with folly or with error, how much more frail man who lives in a house of clay and whose foundation is dust. Man being made, as we said in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 and 3:19, is often compared to a house of clay. Sun-dried clay bricks were common materials used in the Middle East in building houses, as they are easily washed and destroyed in rainstorms. So man, just as easily can be destroyed and return to dust as washed out bricks. And so we're looking at the fragility of human being, of all of us, is what he's saying. And who are crushed before the moth, literally, that is the Hebrew. Man is so frail and fragile that the least little thing can crush him. As small moths can destroy clothing, so the slightest thing can destroy man's life. And how true that is. And that's why our confidence, and I'm making a New Testament application, has to be in the Lord. And I believe in Jesus as a Christian minister who has said that he'll be with us through the end of time until we go to be with him if we have our faith rooted in him. So we continue then in verse 20. Miboker le'erev yukatu, mible mesim lenetzach yovedu. From morning to evening, they are shattered. They have been shattered. Without one, I think we could translate this regarding it or placing it probably to the mind understood. They perish forever. La netzach yovedu. A couple grammatical points here. From morning to evening, they have been caused to be shattered. Here we have a whole foul, imperfect, third person plural, from katat, third masculine plural, from katat, to be caused to be shattered. Then mibli, without one regarding it, is the way I believe I would translate this. The root is seem, to place, and we could understand placing to the mind, I think, here. And this is a hiphil participle, masculine singular, from seem. So without one regarding it, forever, yovedu, they perish. From avad, it's a pay aleph verb, a cow imperfect, third person masculine plural, from avad. So as we look at this particular verse, verse 20, man quickly perishes, is what Eliphaz is saying. He is here in the morning, and in the evening he is gone. In a day he is dead. So the brevity of man's life is what he's talking about. He is here 1 minute, but not the second. And his death, says Eliphaz, is soon forgotten by most with hardly a thought. And that's a sobering thought when we think about it. Even though Eliphaz's reasoning is wrong relative to Job's suffering, what he's describing here is true about life. And that's why it is so important that we live our life with meaning. And as a Christian minister, to me, the greatest meaning, I've often heard the statement when I was a boy, only one life for Christ. Only one life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. And I can't believe how fast life goes. It just seems like I can remember yesterday when I was young, playing basketball and in high school, and yet how quickly life passes. And that's true. This text is saying for every human being. That's why it's important to redeem the time. And to me, looking at the New Testament, redeeming the time is to serve Jesus Christ with all of our strength and what we can do uh, while we have life and while we have the ability to do it. Then we come to verse 21, and it reads, Halo nisa yitrambam yamutu velo vechokma. Is it not, or is not, their tent cord within them plucked up? Notice nisa here is from nasa, to be pulled up. It's a nifal perfect, third masculine singular from nasa. It's a pay noon verb. Historically, it would have been ninsa, becoming nisa, where the noon has assimilated into the Samic by progressive assimilation. So, is not their tent cord plucked up, the nifal here with the noon prefix then. They die and without wisdom. Yamutu is from the root mut. It's a cow imperfect, third masculine plural from mut. They die below the chokmah, and not with wisdom, not in wisdom. So as we look at this and ponder this verse, as the candle of life is extinguished, it is likened to a tent cord that is plucked up. When a tent cord was plucked up and moved, it pictured the dissolution or destruction of one's dwelling. One's home or dwelling was taken away. This is often likened to death. We see this in Isaiah 33, for example, 20, and 38:12. Man thus, the text is saying, is a finite creature and dies before he has been able to accumulate wisdom, or dies without accumulating the right wisdom. Eliphaz's argument in verses 17 to 21 then has been, if I could summarize it, if angels cannot vindicate themselves before a holy God, how much less will feeble man be able to do so, whose life is so fragile and temporary? That's his thought. And as I've been saying, applying it to the New Testament, I think the thought in the New Testament is to redeem the time. Knowing if you're serving the Lord, that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. But there's two truths that are taught here, even though the whole argument with Job is not valid, in the sense that Job was not suffering because of his sin. And so Eliphaz's thesis does not fit in Job's case. However, what is being talked about here is profound. And I would agree with Peake that it is one of the works of genius that we find in all of literature. I wanted to make a statement in the New Testament, a couple concepts that find these ideas repeated. Paul will say in Romans 3, there is none righteous, no, not one. Everyone has sinned. Everyone has fallen short of the glory of God. The second truth in New Testament application is, I believe, in James, where it says, a very powerful text in James 4. Some will say, tomorrow we will go and do such and such. We will spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas, notice James says, you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is like a vapor that appears for a little while and vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. So I think James is dealing with the same thing, that life is like a vapor. It's here and then it's gone. And in this text in Job, the truth of what he's saying, even though it's not, the application doesn't fit with Job's situation, the truth is profound. And life is like a vapor. And that's why I'm reminded of Paul's writings. We've all sinned. The good news is in Christ, that sin has been, can I say, taken away and paid for. And Paul will talk about the whole idea of justification and how we've been acquitted through faith in Christ and what he accomplishes for us in the cross. And then, as one becomes a believer, we are told that we need to buy up the time. We need to redeem the time. And but we can know that while we may be forgotten in this world, and I think Job is right about that, and the thought is, even so, our toil is not in vain in the Lord, in 1 Corinthians 15. One of the most important things we can realize is that someday we can look forward to, well done, good and faithful servants, for all who seek to redeem the time for Jesus Christ. So I wanted to make some New Testament thought and application as I'm working through the grammar and also the commentary of Job. And I hope this is helpful to some. I would encourage you to try to work through the Hebrew text. Job is a powerful classic, wonderful classic. The Hebrew is challenging, and so I want to just slowly work through it and invite anyone that would like to join, that hopefully it can be a help. Thank you so much.